Right, let's go.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the Biophiles with myself, Ed, Dids and Jack. We've got 3 more bits of science which we want to share with you and discuss with us really. Who wants to go first? Dids, do you want to go first?
Oh, I knew that was coming. I'd be put on the spot. So mine is a new CRISPR. It's a gene editing technology. CRISPR. So the title is CRISPR cousin put to the test in a landmark heart disease trial. Um, should I explain CRISPR briefly, just because it is a CRISPR cousin?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I reckon
Worth
so.
it? Yeah. Uh, CRISPR Cas9 is a technology, a gene editing technology, which causes double-stranded breaks in DNA and basically replaces it with a sequence that you want to put in, um, giving like a cell a new characteristic. Or you can even just remove DNA and let it fix itself, with just in the absence of that gene. So this version is slightly less destructive. So I was saying that CRISPR creates those double-stranded breaks. This one literally just goes in and swaps out bases.
Bases are the building blocks of DNA. DNA is made up of 4 different letters. But then you're saying this one doesn't break the DNA, it just replaces one of the building blocks?
Or several, yeah, but it
Or
basically
several?
just instead of CRISPR like slices, makes cuts is the technical term, 2 parts of DNA and removes that gene or everything or whatever is between those 2 cuts. So it's a clean cut, and then the cell's DNA repair mechanisms will come in and like resynthesize that. Whether we've inserted a gene or not, it will just rejoin up. But that's obviously quite prone to mistakes, or can be quite prone to mistakes because it's such a destructive like mechanism. But the CRISPR cousin, um, which I'm not sure they've actually named it, but it basically just goes in and swaps out bases, so it's a lot less destructive. There's no just removal. It's not a double strand break. I wouldn't even say it's well, I guess it is a single strand break, but you're just swapping out a base at this point. So one of the applications, which the paper goes on to talk about, is for lowering cholesterol, um, and it would basically be converting a adenine base, so an A, to a guanine, which is a G, um, in the DNA encoding a protein which is PCSK9, which is a key regulator of blood cholesterol levels. Um, and obviously, if it just allows you to genetically reduce cholesterol levels, I suppose.
Is this the paper? Because this has entered a clinical trial like in the last couple of months, isn't it?
July, yeah,
Is it July? Oh wow.
in July.
Let's, let's not release this in winter then. This is hot off the press.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wait a year. No, it's in 2023. Sorry, 20. This paper came out 15th of July, 2022. Um,
Nice.
the tests are expected to report results in 2023. So I'll just read it. Like, the study will be followed by another base editing trial slated to treat its first participant later this year that will aim to treat sickle cell disease, a genetic blood disorder. So that's another application of it. Um, so I think sickle cell disease is a recessive genetic disease. Is that correct? Yeah, you need
I think so,
2
yeah.
alleles. Yeah, and basically it causes like warped red blood cells, which inhibit the amount of oxygen that can be carried around the body. Correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah,
lads. Jump
that's
in whenever
correct.
you want.
That's
Um,
correct. Doesn't it also confer some resistance to malaria?
it does indeed. Thanks for taking my favourite talking
Ah,
point.
sorry, no. Right, let's edit that out. Edit that out.
That
Go
was
on.
that was going to be my stop code on,
Ah, we
but
can
it's gone.
pretend that I can edit these things.
No, it's gone. It's gone. It's ruined. But yeah, no, that's just pretty cool. But it's obviously this technology is really great for like removing genetic disorders, which are kind of a bit fiddly, or maybe you don't want to do something that's so damaging. And it's already going into its clinical trial, so it seems to be pretty safe.
Do you know how they get it to the cells? Because like in CRISPR-Cas9, it's don't they use like a virus, the adeno-associated virus, AAV?
No, so it uses the same technology as what the COVID vaccine is developed with. So it's in like the mRNA COVID-19 vaccine.
Yeah.
That method. I mean, they literally say The Verve trial aims to edit cells directly in the body. The team has encased the base editing components, messenger RNA, encoding the enzyme needed to alter the DNA. So that's the CRISPR cousin.
So it is straight mRNA which they're putting in.
So the messenger, well, obviously the messenger RNA will be encoded to produce the protein which is going to do the cut, and an extra snippet of RNA that will direct the enzyme to the correct location. So that's the Cas9 aspect of CRISPR.
Okay.
That enzyme obviously gets in there. Well, is that correct? No, the RNA. Sorry, it's the guide RNA, isn't it? That goes in there and directs the enzyme. The Cas9 cuts it.
So the RNA, they put the RNA in you, and the RNA is just like DNA, but with like DNA is read into RNA, and then RNA is read into proteins. And this protein then finds the DNA, which has the base they want to change.
Yeah.
And that's helped by this other bit of information they put in there, another bit of RNA.
And that then,
that's biology is crazy. Like that's insane, isn't it?
But yeah, so they say the nanoparticles will be concentrated in the liver, which is what I was talking about earlier, the PCSK9, the cholesterol regulating protein. That's where it's concentrated apparently. So it'll act there,
Okay.
probably to nullify the expression of the enzyme.
Interesting. Do you know if you say this is for cholesterol and they're also doing it for sickle cell as well?
So yeah, the what I think is quite cool about this the sickle cell trial. So they're doing two trials. They're doing that cholesterol trial and the sickle cell trial. I'm unsure as to if any of them have started, but they will get both results in 2019. They did say the month. I think I said the month earlier, but no, I didn't. So yeah, the results will come back in 2013. But what's really cool about the sickle cell assessment, that cholesterol is going to be, they're going to try and locate the delivery of this technology into the liver. But for the sickle cell trial, it will be the base editing to blah, 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 blah. The base editing technology, so the cousin of CRISPR, is going to be used to alter DNA in blood stem cells that have been removed from the body, so from the patient, and then the edited cells will obviously be treated with the technology and then reinfused back into participants, and hopefully it'll work.
Wow. So what? Put that into the bone marrow then, and
yeah, they'll put it back into the bone marrow. Let those cells that are now expressing the modification reproduce and populate the blood cell population of the person. And obviously, there's no fear of rejection because they're their own cells. I hope that was interesting.
Nice. Do you have any more points to add to your?
That's actually it.
Your topic, or should we wrap up and move on? Right. Shall I move on to my one?
Mm-hmm.
So I've been trying to read about hay fever, or as it's known in the scientific community, allergic rhinitis, as it's currently summer. And I think this year I have hay fever for potentially the first time, or at least I'm noticing the symptoms more than I have ever noticed. So allergic rhinitis is when your body reacts to hay fever. It could be pollen, that could be dust in the air, it could be house mites and stuff. And what happens is initially in your nose, these pollen receptacles and particles, they're not, pollen isn't one particle, it's a mix of lots of different particles, and that gets detected by receptors, which are proteins which are on the outside of your cell, which kind of like Velcro. They pick things up, and then that can then cause some other responses to occur. And in this case, it causes an immune response because your body thinks, "Oh my gosh, that's not us. We need to. We're being attacked. Let's go crazy." So when you cut your hand, or if you have a cut and it goes red and swollen around it, that's because your body's doing an immune response to the thing, little microbes which might have got in. And that's the same which is happening in your nose. So these things called mast cells pick up the pollen, or the allergen as it's called. And eventually this causes this immune response, which I was saying, where kind of liquid is brought in from your lymph and your blood. And this contains your immune cells, such as T cells, which you might have heard of. Because it's coming in this liquid, this is that's what mucus is, and that's why your nose starts running. And what I found quite interesting is the reason your eyes go stuffy is because your duct between your eyes and your nose, and that usually releases your tears into your nose to kind of get rid of excess tears which you have. Not just when you see a cute cat video, but actually when just throughout the whole day, because your eyes are continually watering. So the mucus blocks up that tube, which then prevents the water from getting taken out through your nose, which then is why your eyes start filling up and going puffy and swelling. And you also have a duct between your ear and your nose, which gets blocked up, so you start to feel like you've got a heavy head and stuff, and that can kind of cause disorientation and kind of you feel a bit like you've got a heavy head really. And then you've also got nerve endings in your nose as well, which then get aggravated and they go up to your brain, and your brain's like, oh, sneeze, just sneeze, and just trying to get whatever's in your nose out. So that's what happens when you initially get a pollen, when you react to pollen. But then hay fever occurs when your body gets really, really reactive to it. So I should say that what I just described there was when you really, really get reactive to it. Initially, your body senses some pollen, it's right, let's get rid of that. It's foreign, we don't want it. And then when you get sensitized to it, that is when you start going crazy and releasing all of these immune responses, causing your face to swell up and your nose to continually run and your eyes to water as well. There's different ways of kind of testing to see if you have it, because you go into your doctor and it could be a whole whole host of things. It could be a cold, or it could be something else, and a lot of people don't actually notice they have allergic rhinitis or hay fever, or they don't really think it's worth going to the doctor. But if you do, then your doctor can run tests on you, such as a skin test, where they literally just put different allergens on your skin. It's like if you're allergic to nuts, they just put nuts in your skin and then see if you react
Our
to the
doctor
nuts.
needs to get fired.
Yeah, I know.
Does this work?
Yeah. Itchy?
Can you breathe still?
Even more interesting than that, one of the ways to treat allergic rhinitis, there aren't very many treatments. You've got antihistamines, and that is because with the immune response, a lot of histamine gets released. That's a chemical which then causes your surrounding cells to go crazy, and that's also what causes the fluid to be able to get into your nose, because usually your cells are really tight, but this makes them leaky, so they start floating in. So antihistamines try and block histamine receptors, so that's something on another cell which can see that histamine is nearby. But those don't always work, because that's not just histamine which is causing the immune response. There's also something called leukotrienes as well, and you can get leukotriene blockers, and you can also get anti or corticosteroids, which are meant to be pretty good as well. But one of the immunotherapies you can get against allergic rhinitis is they just keep on giving you more and more allergens.
Desensitization treatment.
It is. That's it. They
Yeah.
try and build up your body's react or immune system against it. So then, when you do just get a small dose of hay fever or a small dose of pollen, it's, oh well, that's nothing. We can clear that easily. Rather than just going oh my gosh, guys, we need to go crazy. And literally one of these immunotherapies is just grass tablets. So you just eat it grass. And yeah, and it's very gradual. So over a couple of years, I'll tone you up until you're eating insane amounts of grass or whatever.
Chewing a cud like a cow.
Yeah.
I have a question for myself.
Yeah.
Well, no, for you, but about myself. So I've had hay fever since I was a kid, and I've now got it where I'm getting allergic to fruits, a bunch of different fruits. Do you know anything about why that happens? Why it goes from hay fever to other plants?
Yeah, so apparently that's because the pollens or proteins which are on the outside of these fruits will have similar structures to the pollens which you're allergic to.
It's weird though, because even fruits which I used to eat regularly, there's not many, but
Have you
they're
noticed that the fruits are from the same group, like citrusy, or are they
to a
other
certain
fruit?
extent, yeah. But they're also just some weird ones which, again, I've been eating them for for years, and it's never caused me any problems. And then like suddenly it started giving me problems in like the last year or so.
That's so strange, isn't it? That like one of the treatments is persistent exposure, but at the same time, persistent exposure can just exacerbate the illness or the disease. Illness, disease? Can we use those interchangeably?
I'm a diseased man. I say it's a condition because you can't. Yeah.
Are you allergic to apples, Jack? Do they cause it?
Yeah, and that was actually one of the first ones
One of the
that I
first
got
ones.
allergic to. Yeah, is that a
So
common one?
it apparently is. So birch pollen is one of the things which, like the pollen which causes a lot of people to have hay fever. I think, particularly in the West, like in different regions, different plants cause hay fever, which is why, say you were to go to America, you wouldn't really have hay fever because they've got different things over there, like mugweed or mugwort, which is a type of weed, causes it. But yeah, so apparently I've got written down here 70% of birch pollen allergenic patients, so those people who get hay fever to birch pollen, they also develop symptoms of allergy to some plant foods, which include apples, hazelnuts, celery, and carrot. So be careful if you have those. And they say like one way you can get around it is just by peeling all of these things, and yeah, because these proteins are on like the outside, usually on the outside of these fruits and veg or plant-based foods. If you peel the outside, then you're more likely to be okay. But that's not to say that you will be better. That also reminds me that the like one of the first things the GP says to you is if you've got, or apparently the GP says to you, or one of the first things to advise, if you have hay fever, just don't go outside. Just don't say, well, if you're gonna get it from going outside, don't go outside. It's also, it gets worse on windy days as well, because then it starts blowing the
Circulating everywhere.
blowing
Yeah.
all the pollen everywhere. Which although
Yeah, but I was just saying, just thinking, like, when you said you can get around it if you skin the fruit, I suppose it kind of figures as well because if all the pollen's blowing about and the fruit's outside on a tree, it's natural that you're going to get some pollen land on it. So, can you get hay fever from like orally ingesting the pollen or the proteins, or does it have to be inhaled?
I
Is
think
it
the
by oral? I mean,
receptors,
swallow.
yeah, I think the receptors are in your nose. But then saying that, if you're eating fruit and that's causing a reaction, that
Yeah.
suggests that like maybe you do have receptors in other places, but these things might be so like kind of like dust, like if it just comes up into the air, like even brief
Bite
amount, like, it
it
might
and
be
it just
when yeah,
yeah.
then it's going to cause yeah. And you were saying earlier, like, is it the same fruit class of fruits and stuff? Like usually, I think it's seen that similar classes do a fruit will cause like hay fever if one of them does because they'll share the proteins or they're likely to share proteins. But you might also have proteins which like are structurally similar between plants and they can like cause it as well. That's why like apples and birch they're only 50% like similar protein sequence, but then that's enough for your receptors can like pick it up. I guess it depends which part's the same as well. If there's like a small bit which the receptor is actually like attaching to.
Mm.
Anyway, so I have a stop code on, and this is talking about the instance in children having allergic rhinitis. So, do you think a high proportion of children between the ages of 3 and 5 in Beijing, China, do you reckon they have a higher or less proportion than children between 6 and 7 in England?
I'd
Does
Less.
that make sense?
say I'd say the kids in China have higher chance.
Higher? And
I
you're
would say
saying
they have less.
they're less. What's the reasoning? Do you have reasoning?
I'm thinking because of the
China's
pollution, like it'll be
yeah.
irritating their lungs all the time, and that will maybe make them more sensitive.
See, I was going the other way, and I was going to say that pollution will destroy mucosal membranes and make them less sensitive.
Jack, you are right. A study in 2012 reported that the incidence can be as high as 48% in children between the ages of 3 and 5 in
What?
Beijing, China. Yeah, 48%. Whereas in a study which was looking at children between 1999 and 2005, children between the ages of 6 and 10 only had a 10% incidence. So 10% of children. So that's 48. They're slightly different age groups and it's different times of monitoring, which means it's not like a perfect comparison. But yeah, as you were saying, Jack, it's because of pollutants. One thing I wanted to leave on is a it wasn't really a theory. It was just kind of like a postulation by a professor who works on diseases at, I think it was at Imperial or something, and he was saying how since COVID there's been a large increase, or it looks like there's been a large increase in people developing allergic rhinitis, and he thinks this might have been because during COVID everyone was keeping themselves to themselves. We were cleansing our hands with hand sanitizer, which was like killing all your microbes and everything. So your exposure to pathogens, and just pathogens which you see in everyday life, which wouldn't cause any problems to you, such as pollen, your exposure to these go right down. So your body's immune system isn't really like actually being troubled by anything. It's just kind of chill. Then when some pathogen comes around, it then goes even more crazy just because it hasn't been active like as much as it has been in the past.
That's really interesting though, because I thought that as well. I thought that when we all come out of like isolation, I don't know if you guys found it, but I definitely did. But when we came out of isolation, I figured that everyone's just going to get ill because we're not our immune system is just chilling out, and as you said, like it lays dormant, and then it doesn't just recover how and like is now fighting fit and will defend you better than ever. It's not really like that. It's kind of turned off because it's a metabolic demand that's not needed, and like the energy could be better used elsewhere. So,
Well,
it's
no,
not turned
I
off.
think Ed's saying the opposite though. He's saying that it's been unstimulated for so long that like when something comes along that's not even a disease, it just looks vaguely like a disease. It goes, "Oh
Got it
my
kicks
god,"
off.
and just throws everything at it because it thinks it's like HIV or something.
Oh yeah, that's
But
fair. It's a fair point. Like the fact that we're not exposed to pathogens all the time, it does kind of like ruin your immune system a little bit. Like you're not getting that. I wouldn't say you're getting that practice to
Yeah, it's like a
like
muscle, isn't it?
work.
It needs to be
Yeah.
trained, needs to be
Yeah,
kept
that's
in
the
shape.
point that I
Otherwise,
was
it's
trying to make. Like when I came out of isolation, like when everyone was isolated and started to like reintegrate with the world again, I got loads of colds and whatnot. Not because I was eating mud and like licking door handles, but just because I was suddenly exposed to a load of stuff that my immune system wasn't really used to, I suppose.
but if you
Maybe.
had eaten mud and licked door handles, you would have been all right.
You know what? I've seen where you're coming from now.
Right, we're going well over time. Jackie boy.
what I was looking at was this disgusting parasitic wasp, basically.
Oh,
Yeah, we all love a parasitic wasp.
The Asian hornet.
No, it's the Costa Rican wasp. Although I heard there's also a species that lives in the UK as well. That's where I originally heard about it. So yeah, no one's safe. But yeah, it basically it will attack its target, basically either like a spider or a caterpillar or something like that. It will lay their eggs in this animal, and then what happens is obviously its little larvae grow inside the host for I don't know a few weeks or something, and then when they finally hatch, the animal's still alive. And what it does, instead of going like, because it's like a scene from Alien, and instead of killing these like disgusting little monsters that have just sprouted out of its belly, it wraps a cocoon around them.
ooh,
But like the really weird thing is that spiders do this as well, and spiders don't normally make cocoons, and like they make like little nests for their eggs, but what they make for these little larvae is unlike anything they would normally make in the wild. And it's just really weird that somehow this wasp is able to inject some kind of chemical into their brains that allows them to create a structure that they never created before in the wild.
wow.
Is this
Um,
different to the wasp that stings its prey, immobilizes it, puts its larvae in its like prey as well? It develops, and then the larvae, as they grow, they eat the live um, host, but they do it in a way that like the host survives so long that like the meat kind of doesn't go bad, if you know what I mean.
yeah, it's exactly like that. Yeah. But then at the end, when they finally come out of the body, what's left of the animal, then instead of freaking out or like even trying to kill the larvae, actually builds them a nice little nest to
That's
carry on
mad.
growing in.
Ugh.
And yeah, it's like
So,
it's
do
quite a
you reckon it
complex
like destroys
behavior.
part of the spider's brain, so then it like starts doing it 'cause there's less brain, or do you think it causes a reaction within the brain that then causes it to do something else?
I mean, at this moment, they still don't have any idea. They've looked into it and they can't work out what it is about the wasps that's making them do this. But
You wouldn't want to be the scientist working on this, would you?
no,
Nah. Is this the zombie?
Thinking
Is this the zombie stuff?
yeah,
that's, I think there's a fungus. There's a fungus as well that isn't there, which then causes ants to like climb up to a tree,
Kill
yeah,
himself.
yeah.
then like
So
kill, or not kill themselves. They're literally a zombie. They're already dead, pretty much.
Yeah.
Just being like told to climb upwards, and then the spores are released, which then go like spread out
Yeah,
onto the
but there's a
ground to
wasp.
kill other wasps.
There's a wasp. Like, I don't know if this is the same thing. It sounds so similar, but like it injects its prey and then it effectively like brainwashes the prey just to kind of chill out, like come with you.
oh
They're really
yes,
relaxed. I think is this the same? I think this is the same thing.
no, that's a different one.
There are loads of parasitic wasps, so it could be
Yeah,
a
Oh
different one.
yeah, there is one like
god.
that though, where they sort of zombify it, and then it
Yeah.
literally it grabs it by the antenna and just like walks it to wherever it wants it to go. It'll like dig a little
Yeah. Yeah.
burrow, and then it will like grab the whatever it's zombified and just grab it by the antenna and make it like follow it down into this burrow, and then just
Yeah.
bury it
Yeah.
alive.
Yeah. And then the larvae grow out of that as well. All right. So this is
Yeah,
different, but that's also cool.
yeah.
Oh man, that's messed up. So they don't know what it is that does it. They don't know if it's a chemical
No.
imbalance and if they're like triggering maternal instincts, if spiders or their prey have maternal instincts.
Well, yeah.
Or
So Ed mentioned earlier that there's also a fungus which can do a similar thing with ants.
yeah,
And they have managed to work out what was up with that. And it's really surprising as well because it's quite complex behavior that they're managing to get out of these ants. But they've narrowed it down to literally like two or three compounds in not the venom, but like that's secreted by the fungus. And it can literally make it will basically come out of the nest in the morning, climb up to like a blade of grass or something or some kind of plant, and then bite down on that plant and just stay there all day. And then when like nighttime comes, it will just unclench its jaws and climb back down and like go about its day in the nest. It's really weird. But they managed to do all that just by injecting three compounds into its brain somehow.
Just
wow.
3. That's insane. Do you reckon it's like some like almost like dopamine thing? Do you reckon they get like a sense of high by being in high places?
Yeah, then they're not really. They're still not really sure. They think it's basically it would go and eat a piece of grass anyway, but then instead of eating it, it sort of like bites down and then forgets to do anything else and just sits there for like 8 hours.
Yeah, so
Um,
what's like the end goal? How does the fungus benefit from this?
um, I think it's just somewhere for it to grow. I think
In the
The
maybe
what?
fungus.
I
This is
should.
in the ant, isn't
Sorry,
it?
in the ant. Is it in the ant or is it
Yeah, it's
like
in the ant. Yeah, and it will slowly grow out of the ant.
The pictures are horrible. The thing which grows out of the wasp's head, which contains the spore, and then that then gets released to then like go float down, spread everywhere onto the forest floor, to then go and infect hundreds of,
Exactly.
I don't even know how many ants, to then do the same thing.
oof,
But do you reckon the ants are happy
It's disgusting.
showing it? Do you reckon they think this is like a
serving my master?
euphoric moment? Like, not so much master. Do you
I
reckon, like, oh,
think
this just feels so right, all the way to death?
I think zombie is like actually quite a good way to describe it because by the looks of it, especially with that fungus, it basically eats away quite a decent chunk of its
Oh,
brain, and then it just keeps intact the bits that it needs to like
Survive
go
and
and climb
operate.
up a twig.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. I was reading about parasitic wasps years ago, and I think one of the things that I remember from them is you get some sort of parasitic wasps which get affected by parasitic wasps. So, like, there's a parasite of a parasitic wasp could be another parasitic wasp because they can get really, really small, can't they? They can be like microscopic in size. I know it's not my place to do a stop code on, but guess the species or what has more species, wasps or parasitic wasps, and by how many more?
parasitic wasps by a factor of 5.
Parasitic wasp for you.
Yeah.
Same for you, Jack?
I'm going to say parasitic wasp by a factor of
By
15.
a factor of 15. Okay, so according to National Geographic, there are 30,000 identified species of wasps. And if we go over to Wikipedia, the parasitoid wasp includes in very large groups, some estimates giving the Clachidioidea, I haven't pronounced that right, as many as 500,000 species. And that's just like one group of parasitic wasps. They then also quote another group which has 100,000 species and another one which has 50,000 species. So just these ones which are
Jesus.
mentioned in this one sentence, that's
Oh.
650,000 compared to the 30,000 of known wasps. Can they be a danger to humans at all? Or are they too small to kind
That
of
was going to
have
be
any
my
impact?
question.
Not that I'm aware of in terms of wasps. Obviously, there's like bot flies and stuff which lay their eggs, but I've definitely not heard of any where it like affects human behavior.
Yeah. Going back to saying, I said you don't want to be the researcher who works on that. I heard the other day that the researchers who work with, I've also been told this as well, with mosquitoes and mosquito labs, because like a lot of work's being done to try and prevent malaria and like create males and females which are going to mate with other mosquitoes to produce like infertile offspring to prevent their succession. But apparently mosquitoes are really picky with what they feed on. So you can't just kind of give them a little jar with some blood in it. You can either like heat up a petri dish, put some blood in it, and then put some parafilm over it to like kind of recreate the skin. But apparently
Really?
even then they can be a bit picky. So what a lot of labs do is they just shove their arms in these like where all the mosquitoes are and just let themselves be the food for these mosquitoes. It's like it's
Wow.
feeding time. And shove their own
Yeah.
arm in, and then they then just get filled up with these bites. All these mozzies are hungry and they want some blood, and you're the subject. Yeah,
Do they make like the placement student do that?
they probably do, don't they? Like
The
yeah.
undergrad.
Well, thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Biofiles with myself, Dids, and Jack. Stay tuned for our next one, which will probably be in about another 8 months' time, hopefully sooner, where we talk to you about some interesting biological topics.